Faites l'appel, s'il vous plaît, Madame le greffier.
Rain Barber. Tara Batrick. Jade Carrow. Leah Davies. Ella Duxbury. Victoria Esselmont. Yasmin Jenkins. Kelly Martins. Ines Monero. Ilaria Petty. Lily Sheridan. Sienna Spring. Maria Strujario. Grace Thompson. Petra Vieira. Emily Fitzpatrick.
L'Assemblée est constituée. Well, I'm absolutely... Oh. Yes. Prayers, then. Madame le greffier? Or no? Jade Carrow of the Jersey College for Girls will lead some prayers.
Okay. Notre Père qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite en la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonnons nos offenses comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous enduis pas point en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal. Car à toi est la règne, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen.
Now I think I say l'Assemblée est constituée. Well, as I was about to say, welcome everybody. I'm really pleased to welcome members of the Youth Assembly. It's a great pleasure to be part of the Assembly, and I'm sure you'll have an enormously interesting afternoon. I'd like to have stayed for the whole event, but I'm not sure that I'm able to do so. It may be that other court commitments are going to call me into court this afternoon. But if I disappear, as I'm likely to do, Deputy Hilary Jeune of St John's, St Lawrence and Trinity, who's Deputy Chair of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, which supports this event, will take over from me and chair the rest of the session, and you'll be in entirely good hands in those circumstances. I'm sorry that I can't be here for the whole event because, judging by the questions and the debate topics that have been listed on the order paper, it promises to be a very interesting afternoon. This is the 26th year that this event has been held, and I'm pleased to say that not only have we seen former Youth Assembly participants become members of the Assembly, including a couple in the current Assembly, but also several participants have gone on to a career in the public sector. So it's a great experience which hopefully lays the groundwork for an enduring interest in Jersey politics. Maybe some of you, armed with these experiences, will think about standing for election or pursuing a job in the political arena in the future. And at the very least, you will be wholly persuaded about the enormous importance of casting your vote when the time comes. Now, the Assembly is slightly smaller in number than last year. I understand that your colleagues from De La Salle and Victoria College were unable to join us. I have absolutely no reason why that would be the case, and so I will make no observation about it, but I have every faith that this distinctly female event will be a great success. I hope you're going to have an absolutely marvellous afternoon. I'm sure that you will. The ministers are eager to respond to your questions, so we will make a start. I'm sure you've had the procedure explained to you fully, and we start with questions with notice, oral questions. So we come to the first item on the order paper, which is question time, and I call upon Sienna Springer de Beaulieu, who will ask a question of the Connétable St Peter, Minister for Children and Families.
Given the 2023 findings of the Care Commission, which found that 3 children's homes were not fit for purpose, will the Minister explain how he proposes to increase the number of care providers in Jersey so that children do not have to leave the island?
Minister.
Thank you for that question, and thank you, sir.
Emergency accommodation was established for children requiring urgent care and protection. And at the time, there was no places available across our care services. I would like to point out that actually this accommodation was required as a number of children had been put in our care by the courts, and it was in fact the week before Christmas. Emergency accommodation is referred to as regulated activity in unregistered settings. It is not a care home, as was reported in the media. This type of emergency accommodation is extensively used across the UK and had previously been used in Jersey in a number of emergency situations. I am pleased that in fact it was accommodation of an extremely high standard and had been used in the past. Nevertheless, as it is in unregistered settings, it will never be able to meet all the regulations associated with regulated activity. The department has since opened 2 new children's homes, and that took some time. This will prevent the need for emergency accommodation in the future. There have been no further incidents of unregulated activity or children accommodated in unregistered settings, and we have no unregistered provision at present. Moving into 2024, our fostering service delivery has received a revised and innovative approach to meeting our sufficiency duty on the island. That is to say that we are beginning to replace care homes where possible with foster carers, which provides a much better environment for children. Many fostering service providers across the British Isles and beyond were impacted significantly by the COVID-19 pandemic, with a focus on fostering recruitment significantly reduced amongst the general public. And this again was one of the reasons why, at that time, we had no accommodation available. This year, Jersey Fostering Service has a wider reaching recruitment, marketing and comms strategy, and adjustments have been made to work streams within the service delivery to ensure faster response rates, robust timescales, and a high level of preparatory and mandatory training available for foster carers, and a fully staffed service. As part of our new strategy, since January, we have 5 new general fostering households approved and 1 intensive foster carer household approved and 2 other connected fostering household approvals. We have 4 more households coming through the fostering panel in the next 3 fostering panels. 1 family were allocated for full assessment this week, following the Skills to Foster preparation training. There are 4 more households submitting fostering applications as a result of this training in the next 2 weeks. They will be allocated for assessment within 7 days. We will have exceeded our annual target by June. We are now busy preparing for all our new Teens campaign, which are likely to generate more inquiries. We have a robust timetable of regular recruitment campaigns throughout the year, alongside new plans for constant presence across the island. We have an extremely energised and passionate fostering team delivering our services this year. All of the children's homes have been visited by the Interim Director of Children's Social Care. I joined some of the visits. Independent visits are conducted every month to quality assure the homes under Regulation 31 of the Regulation of Care Law. A new service improvement lead has been employed to manage the homes and work on improvements so that each unique child is receiving the best care. Where possible, our children in Jersey are placed on island. There are 15 children placed in the UK, and the recent inspection by the Jersey Care Commission noted that the level of care is very good. A social worker is placed in the UK to visit our children, and her presence was also noted to be excellent. I should point out that placements in the UK tend to be where specialist care is required, which isn't available on an island which is 9 by 5. Thank you.
Yes, supplemental question. Ms. Springett. You now have the chance to ask a follow-up question on the basis of what the Minister has said. You can ask it, the Minister has covered a huge amount of ground, more than one might normally get in an answer to an oral question. But if you have a supplemental question, you can. And then there'll be a period of about 8 minutes or so for anyone else to ask their own supplemental questions and for the Minister to be given a truly difficult time. Yes, Ms. Springett.
Given the heightened demand for social workers due to the rise in number of children in care, what strategies are being employed to alleviate their heavy caseholds and ensure staff retention within the system?
Thank you very much for that question. In fact, caseloads in Jersey are not as high as you would have in the UK. And in fact, when I visited the Isle of Man, our caseloads per caseworker are in fact lower than theirs. So in fact, the caseloads aren't the problem. The problem is a shortage of social workers, and that's a UK, Europe-wide position at the moment, and something that appears to have happened since COVID. What we are doing is we have a large number of people who are actually on contract, but when I say a large number of people, a year ago we probably had 60% of the people on contract, and we've actually reduced that to 40%. So we now have 60% full-time employees and 40% on contract. So we are managing the situation, and we are also managing the caseloads. Thank you.
Any other supplementary questions? Zero.
How does the government plan to address the shortage of intensive foster carers, particularly in the light of urgent need for specialised support for children placed in such care arrangements?
We are, as part of our campaign for foster carers, we are actually attempting to take on more intensive foster carers. Of course, that requires a greater level of training and a greater commitment. We are developing new packages for those people, and I can say that we have actually already been successful in that we had one new intensive foster care household approved in this quarter. So it's something that we are working on. We're providing the training and also the package that goes with that. Thank you.
Did you have a follow-up question to that, Ms. Vera? Any other supplemental questions for the Minister on this question? We've got time for one more, perhaps. Right, well, but Ms. Springett, you have an opportunity for a final supplementary question if you want one. Very well. Then we, just to give an indication to Minister's answer to the question, Minister will of course recall that the normal convention is that an answer doesn't take more than 1 minute and 90 seconds. I don't propose to apply that to the initial answer because clearly we're covering a different area, but I will apply it to any supplemental answers. Discipline is no bad thing. So, We now come to the next question that Petra Vieira of Bowley will ask of Deputy Luce of Grouville and St Martin, who's the Minister for the Environment. Yes. Vera.
Will the Minister advise whether he would support plastic-free packaging of fruit and vegetables, and if so, how would he propose to implement this in Jersey?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I'd first like to express my thanks for the Youth Assembly's engagement on environmental issues, and secondly, apologise for the length of my oral answer, but this is an important subject. I'm committed to reducing waste and look forward to working with the Minister for Infrastructure on delivering this. A significant volume of plastic packaging is received at the Energy Recovery Facility, making it an important waste stream to tackle. The carbon neutral roadmap includes a commitment to publish a circular economy strategy by 2025. This means moving away from our current linear model of take, make, waste towards an approach where materials are circulated for as long as possible by sharing, maintaining, remanufacturing, and finally recycling. A key part of this ambition is thinking about materials and products at the start of their life and designing out that waste. The circular economy will look at ways that we can change how the economy is structured to phase out unnecessary packaging. Putting more responsibility on suppliers and retailers to produce less waste is one option. This will take time as new methods of protecting produce during transport and ensuring hygiene standards will be needed. As other jurisdictions move towards more stringent restrictions on packaging, we will hopefully see the positive effects as suppliers find innovative solutions to the issue. Extending producer responsibility for packaging in the UK requires producers to pay the full cost of dealing with waste they produce at the end of its life. Similar schemes across the world have accelerated collection and recycling targets, and this is something that we could explore further here in Jersey. The Single-Use Plastics Law prohibits the distribution of single-use plastics and has been a great success in reducing the use of plastic bags here in Jersey. The law was designed to be able to add on other single-use items as required, and work is currently in train to extend it to disposable vapes. Consideration could be given to a future extension to cover plastic packaging on fruit and vegetables. However, careful thought to the consequences of doing this would be needed. One such consideration is the fact that plastic packaging is used to protect goods and extend their life, reducing food waste. If plastic packaging was banned, would we have more food waste? Would introducing such legislation restrict the variety of products available? For example, ready-washed salad leaves or pre-prepared vegetables? And how would people and businesses feel about that? A reduction in plastic packaging on Ireland could also be achieved through voluntary initiatives from shops as well as behaviour change campaigns. I'm delighted that the government supported Food Action Waste Week just a fortnight ago. The theme was Buy Loose, encouraging Irelanders to buy only what they need, reducing food waste and plastic packaging. There have been some positive steps in the right direction on plastic waste, but we need to do more. I welcome the expansion of reuse and refill options for shoppers, and I'm committed to working closely with the Minister for Infrastructure to identify the best way to reduce plastic waste in Jersey. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Minister. Supplemental question, Ms. Vieira.
Can the Minister agree that promoting plastic-free fruit and vegetables is creating a positive social effect as well as an environmental effect, connecting locals to their whole foods and accepting that slightly imperfect products can be accepted and is a goal that we must aspire to? As in the UK, farmers reject 10 tonnes of product a week because the product is considered ugly, and having this plastic-free packaging will reduce the level of food waste in Jersey.
Thank you, sir. There's a number of issues there to deal with, and the first one I would address is ugly vegetables. And we all know what they look like. They're not perfectly shaped, but in most cases they taste equally as good, if not better. And it's become the norm to have you know, apples that are round, carrots that are straight, bananas that have a curve on them. But of course, that's not necessarily always the case in nature. And in order to reduce food waste, one way is to ask the producers to make sure that they market every piece of produce they make or they produce, and shoppers are encouraged to buy them, potentially at a reduced price, which makes them even more attractive. As regards plastic, in my first answer, I did answer that plastic does play a role in extending the life of fruit and vegetables, and that's something we really have to take into account, because on one hand, we don't want the plastic because it's single use and it's not good for the environment, but on the other hand, the plastic allows us to keep those vegetables for longer so that we don't waste them. I think shoppers these days are being a lot more sensible about this, and I think they're looking for loose vegetables. They're not going to buy them as often. They're going to buy them more often in smaller quantities in order to reduce that waste.
Any other supplemental question for the Minister? Ms. Barber.
Does the Minister acknowledge that by making this plastic-free scheme involuntary, it will promote and create active and significant change in our aim to be more sustainable and environmentally friendly, as local farmers will be more inclined to sell more produce?
So can I just clarify the question? Did she use the word involuntary rather than voluntary? Thank you, sir. I think we need to be a little bit careful. Again, I go back to this message about plastic extending the life of fruit. And the questioner may well have a good point. If you go into a shop and it's all loose flow, it's all dirty, it's not washed, it's not been processed, it's not in a plastic package with a plastic wrapper, shoppers wouldn't have the option. And that would be good in as much as we know now with single-use plastic bags. If you go to the supermarket, you want to take your own bag with you. And if we did the same with fruit and vegetables, I'm sure shoppers would turn up with containers that were suitable to take those vegetables away without the need for having those vegetables washed or packaged as they are currently.
Supplemental question on that one? No? Ms. Barber, you don't want a supplemental question? All right. Ms. Vieira.
I have a supplementary question for the reply from before, from my first question. So is promoting ugly fruit and vegetables the next target for the states of Jersey to reduce food waste?
It certainly could be, sir, and I would certainly encourage it. Any food in the ugly fruit is most likely to be produced on island, and I'm sure all the local farmers would be only too delighted to be able to send every potato or courgette or cauliflower that they grow to market and to be bought by somebody and eaten. As we said earlier, it doesn't really matter what the shape of the vegetables like, they all pretty much taste the same. So I would certainly go away from this and encourage both the producers and the retailers of local vegetables and local fruit to market all shapes and sizes of vegetables in the future. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary questions? Any other supplementary question for the Minister on this question? Was that your final supplementary, Ms. Vieira, in that case? Because you get the chance for a final supplementary. Do you have any other one you want to ask? No? Good. Very well. Then we come on to the next question. That Ella Duxbury of Jersey College for Girls will ask of Deputy Todd Birnay of St Saviour, Minister for Health and Social Services. Yes, Ms Duxbury.
Thank you. Will the Minister advise whether there has been any consideration given to lowering the age for mammogram screenings to 40 years old to enhance the early detection and treatment of breast cancer in Jersey? And if not, why not?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for the question. Sir, our local mammography screening programme aligns with the current NHS offer in the UK, insofar as screening is provided every 2 years for all women from the age of 50. For those women at increased risk of breast cancer, where a family history of breast cancer exists, for example, they're offered earlier and more frequent breast screening. Jersey's Screening Board reviews the evidence base for the screening programmes regularly, as well as potential future screening programmes. As new evidence emerges, this will be considered by the board with respect to breast screening in the island. It's our intention to keep the issue of eligibility age under constant review, and if evidence suggests that lowering this is of significant benefit and the funds can be made available, we will of course consider implementing changes as appropriate.
Supplemental question, Ms. Nasri.
I would like to ask the Minister, could you outline the specific criteria or factors that are taken into account when evaluating potential changes to breast cancer screening protocols and how public input and expert opinions are integrated into this decision-making process?
So I wouldn't be able to say at this point in time, given that I'm only 6 weeks into the job, how public opinion is taken into account. But the board comprises of experts with knowledge in this area. And it will be the case that at this point in time, on a cost-benefit analysis, there aren't deemed to be sufficient cases of cancer in the age bracket below 50 to warrant the expenditure on screening. And it's a very, very difficult situation because the health service is short of money. So every time they spend money, they've got to do this cost-benefit analysis to make sure that what they're spending is getting the very best result for the public.
Supplemental question for any other member to this minister? Very well. We come then to the next question that Leah Davis of Holier will ask of Deputy Karina Alves of St Helier Central, who is the Assistant Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning. Ms Davis.
Thank you. Will the Minister detail any plans she has to modernise the island's education curriculum to better align with contemporary needs?
Thank you, sir. And the Minister sends his apology. He had a holiday already. The Jersey Curriculum Council, the JCC, supports the Minister in identifying areas of the curriculum to review and support. Over the past year, the JCC was pleased to work with the Youth Assembly in reviewing the provision and teaching of the PSHE in school. This month, new guidance and resources, both for the content and teaching methods, pedagogy, have been issued for the PSHE in secondary schools and colleges. In addition, the JCC has recently updated the religious education curriculum to include worldviews inclusive of both religious and non-religious beliefs, faiths and traditions. Members of the Youth Assembly joined a JCC meeting, and their input, as well as targeted work with young people in schools, was a valued influence on the update. The curriculum is supported by a non-statutory Jersey-approved syllabus. The Jersey School Review Framework, in its open and published reports, includes an evaluation of the quality and breadth of curriculum offered in schools. I will continue to evaluate the school reports and to work with the Youth Assembly and the JCC with representatives from all schools, as well as with other departments including skills, economy and health, to review the curriculum and any appropriate guidance required to support teachers in meeting the needs of children and young people. Thank you, sir.
Very much. A supplemental question, Ms Davis?
Thank you. When will we see the result of the meeting in our schools? Thank you.
Thank you. I have not been privy to that information. I'm sure the Minister, when he comes back, will be able to update me on that, and we will be in touch as soon as we can. Thank you.
Any other supplementary question for the Assistant Minister? Did you have a further and final supplementary?
Thank you. What is the Minister and JCC going to do to make sure that the curriculum stays up to date on an international level? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Much of the curriculum is dictated to by what is happening nationally. Ultimately, my personal view is that actually the current school model is maybe a little bit outdated in its entirety and probably needs a whole worldwide overhaul. Schools haven't really changed much since they were first set up to churn out factory workers, and obviously we don't live in a factory environment anymore. A lot of the things, even though we may want to do things in isolation and may want to explore, we are unfortunately dictated to by what's happening nationally in order to ensure that all students here are given the best opportunities and are given recognised qualifications that they can then take further afield and worldwide. Thank you.
Very much, Assistant Minister. We now come to the next question, which Ella Duxbury from Jersey College for Girls will ask of the Conotable St John, who is Minister for Infrastructure. Ms Duxbury.
Will the Minister advise whether he has any plans to build additional sport facilities in the island?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the member for her question. Sir, I've always championed sport, recognising the benefits it brings in terms of both physical and mental health. I therefore acknowledge how important it is to have sufficient facilities to allow islanders to participate in sport on the island, both competitive and recreational. This means ensuring that facilities that are principally used in school time are used to their full potential for the benefits of the wider community outside of these hours, when they are currently standing empty or used sparingly. In the next few months, work will commence on an expansion of the sports facilities at Oakfield Sports Centre, representing an investment of some £8.3 million. This expansion includes the establishment of a dedicated gymnastics centre, martial arts dojos, cricket facilities, an indoor sport court for sports such as netball, basketball, volleyball and badminton. And these additions will complement the existing 3G pitch that was completed in 2022. This project represents a significant investment in sports facilities and will replace current provision available at Fort Regent, offering sport users, clubs and associations a much needed improvement in facilities, and the target completion date is September 2025. Alongside the impressive skate park at Lekena Bay, which you may have used, we'll continue to explore the feasibility of introducing new smaller satellite skate parks, potentially located in St Helier or the east of the island, as well as introducing more skate-friendly street furniture in these areas. Thank you, sir.
It's a supplemental question, Ms Duxbury.
I thank the Minister for his response. Could the Minister please advise what specific strategies or initiatives you have in mind to continue the development of sports facilities in Jersey beyond the current projects? Additionally, how do you plan to ensure that these facilities cater to the diverse needs and interests of the island's population, including both traditional and new and emerging sports?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. We continue to look at what we've got and what we need. Only yesterday, the Committee de Conotable was looking at rock climbing and a whole host of different facilities, including pump tracks. So we're very mindful of the need to continue to expand our sports offering, but it's also vitally important that we actually maintain what we've actually got. Far too often, the state is guilty of not maintaining existing facilities, and we end up building a new one when we should have repaired what we had. So we'll continue to work hard. We hope to put a bid in for the Island Games that will allow us to improve facilities that we've already got and also prepare new facilities. And the east of the island, sir, is particular focus for us, and one of the things we're looking at is an all-weather facility at La Rockia.
Right. Any other supplemental questions for the Minister on this matter? Did you have a final supplementary? Very well. Well, we move on then to the next question. That Yasmin Jenkins of Jersey College for Girls will ask of Deputy Tom Binney, Minister for Health and Social Services. Yes, Ms. Jenkins.
Further to reported shortages in ADHD medication, will the Minister advise whether he has a strategy to improve accessibility to this medication for teenagers, given its importance for neurodivergent individuals' daily functioning?
I thank the member for her question. So ADHD services provided by both CAMS and adult mental health services have seen a significant increase in demand in recent times, resulting in longer waiting lists for assessment. In addition, there's been an international shortage for these medications, which is unfortunately out of Jersey's control. In addition, current legislation in Jersey limits the number of practitioners who can prescribe this medication. Our plans to improve this service include the recruitment of additional clinical staff with expertise in this area, changing the way we run our services so that more people can be offered appointments, changing the legislation about who can prescribe the medication. We want to enable GPs to prescribe with support from specialists so that specialists are freed up to see more patients, and developing a neurodiversity strategy that looks at other types of support and interventions which may be helpful that could also help with daily functioning. It's important to note that whilst we can work to improve the infrastructure around prescribing and increase the capacity within our workforce, we are ultimately reliant on UK medication supplies. However, we're doing what we can to improve the supply situation. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Minister. Supplemental question, Ms Jenkins.
Will the Minister advise if he has any plans in place working alongside the Minister of Education to increase the number of ADHD specialists within schools?
So whether that will be ADHD specialists in schools, that's not something that I've actually yet discussed, but it certainly is a good suggestion. And once again, if funding permits, that's something that we could look at. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Ms Hurd? Any other supplemental questions to the Minister? Don't be shy, the Minister's welcoming to getting a really rough time. Very well. Final supplementary? Ms Jenkins, final supplementary? There. All right then, well, we come on to the next question that Millie Sheridan of Holyoke will ask of Deputy Sam Mezek of St Helier South, who's the Minister for Housing. Yes, Ms Sheridan.
Will the Minister advise whether he has any plans to enhance the accessibility of housing for young people, and how is he intending to address ongoing affordability challenges?
Minister.
Thank you. I acknowledge that Jersey has a housing crisis which poses an existential threat to our future prosperity. Young people are consistently telling us that the cost of housing is making many of them lose hope that they can look forward to happy and fulfilling lives here. We must listen to them. When I became Housing Minister 2 months ago, on my first day in office, I established a housing crisis emergency task force and began implementing measures to address it, including supporting islanders into home ownership. I launched the First Step Assisted Home Ownership Scheme last month, which uses a fund of £10 million to help young people with the cost of buying their first home. Improving the experience of islanders who rent their home, I'm planning to make changes to our rental laws to give tenants greater security in their homes, prevent unfair evictions, and protect them against excessive rent increases. I'm also reducing the age at which islanders can access social housing. I recently reduced the maximum age limit to 30 years old, and I will reduce it to 25 later this year. And finally, I'm helping young islanders at risk of homelessness, making sure they have access to accommodation and support and can live independently. There is much more to do to restore the confidence of young people that they have a government that will genuinely work to address their needs and give them hope for a better future here. I hope the start that we've made shows that we have the plan and determination to do this.
Supplemental question, Ms Sheridan.
Has the Minister considered reducing the age to 18 at which social housing can be accessed, as this would provide accessibility to care leavers?
Well, sir, I have previously served as Minister for Children, where I put forward the Care Leavers offer, which was something I was extremely proud of, and I'd like to see that further developed. So there are already pathways that can exist for care leavers to enter social housing beneath the ages that the limits currently set for social housing. But more broadly, yes, I would like the age limit for social housing to come as low as possible, because I think the waiting list for social housing ought to allow anybody on it who's in need, and we shouldn't exclude people because they don't tick this box or they don't tick that box. But in order to do so in a fair way that doesn't overwhelm the waiting list and give people false hope, we also need to make sure that we increase the amount of social housing that we provide so that people who apply can get a home in a timely fashion and aren't left languishing potentially for months or even years on a waiting list when a home's not available for them. But if we can demonstrate that we can do that, then yes, we ought to get that age criteria down as low as possible.
Further supplemental question for anybody for the Minister? Sierra.
Does the Minister acknowledge that building one-bedroom flats is not the answer towards tackling this crisis?
Minister.
I don't accept that it's the only answer, because we do have a demonstrable need for family-sized homes with open space and all of the amenities that we know particularly young children deserve to enjoy as they're growing up. And we've had some challenges in building those new homes, partly because of some of the lack of investment in infrastructure that there's been in recent years. We have zones that are waiting to have 3-bedroom family homes built on them, and we can't go ahead with them yet because they don't have the drains connected, which is extremely frustrating. So we need to resolve that and get building some of those homes. But I would say it's not either or, because there is also a demonstrable need, although it's often not recognised, for 1 and 2 bedroom flats. We have waiting lists for those flats, so there clearly are people who want them. And the more of those that we can build and provide good financial support for young people to buy rather than rent, at least that provides a step on the ladder where from their wages they're investing in their own property ownership rather than going to the private rental sector and paying someone else's mortgage for them. And once you pay your own mortgage and have your own home, whether it's a 1-bedroom flat or otherwise, it's a step to then help you find it easier to move into a 2 or 3 bedroom home. So I don't think it should be either or. We should be building homes of a variety of different tenures and mixes, so everybody can have faith that they have that pathway up into their desirable family home at the end of it.
Have a supplemental question for that, Zira?
Thank you, Minister, for the good response. For the Horizon flats are extremely small. So will the Minister consider extending the minimal size of which a flat room can have?
Thank you. I totally agree about those homes at Horizon, and I was the member who exposed the fact that of the 1-bedroom homes in the Horizon development, not one single one of them meets the minimum space standards for a couple to live in, yet they are charged out, many of them for rent, at a level that you would have to have 2 incomes to be able to rent them without living in rental stress. And I think that was a grotesque failure of planning in the past that has built those kind of homes that are clearly inappropriate for our needs. But I am very pleased to say that because of a proposition that was brought by my colleague, Deputy Tom Coles, we are going to increase the minimum space standards for new 1-bedroom flats by abolishing single-person occupancy. They can now only meet 2-person occupancy, which means that people living together as a couple will have that space around them and not be crammed into a home that's clearly unsuitable for them because of the cost needs. And that's something that's only recently been agreed, so it's still got time to actually be implemented and have those kind of homes starting to be built. But I was very pleased to support Deputy Coles when he brought that proposition because it was the right thing to do.
Any other supplemental questions to the Minister? Yes, Ms Springett.
Has the Minister considered using brownfield sites on the island, which will help lower the time for plumbing and electricity?
Yes, indeed. It was not that long ago that we went through the process of putting an island plan together, which is the document that guides us on what kinds of developments are allowed to be approved. I took the view in that process that I'm very keen to protect as much of Jersey's open green space as possible. And in order to do that, that means making every effort we can to prioritise using what we've already got to a better and more effective extent. That includes getting empty properties back into use because we're all aware of those homes that exist around the island, boarded up, and nobody can figure out why. And focusing on those sites that have already been developed so that they can be redeveloped in a more appropriate way to get those homes on those sites. It's in terms of trying to keep young people believing they can have a decent future in Jersey, affordability is obviously a huge part of that, but we've also got to keep what's so special about Jersey protected as well, and that means protecting our open green spaces too. And the more effective use we get of our built-up environment, the easier it becomes to justify protecting those green spaces too.
Supplemental question, Ms Springett? Ms Duxbury? Sorry, I called upon Ms Duxbury. If you want to ask a question, if you put your light on until I've nodded to you, then I've got your name written down and I know that you want to ask a question. So I'm assuming that you want to ask the next question? Very well. Ms Duxbury, yes.
Does the Minister plan to further subsidise buying houses on return from university to ensure the return of young islanders?
Minister.
Yes, so we recently launched the First Step scheme, which I mentioned here. That is a system where we provide people with equity loans to help them bridge the gap of affordability to help them buy a home. So say, for example, a home's for sale, it's great and they want it, but they could probably only get a mortgage for maybe 70% of it or something like that. The government can provide that 30% to help bridge that gap. We've only just launched that and lots of people have been applying for it. I'm really proud of that and I'm looking forward to passing on those loans to people so that they can start buying those homes. I'm hoping that if we can prove it's a success, then I've got a stronger case to then say to my colleagues, we've used £10 million for that initial scheme, could we have some more? Because the more that we get to that, the more we can help more people. And I would urge any young person who wants to benefit from a scheme like that, we live in a democracy, so please contact your states members and urge them to get behind efforts to increase access to that scheme and get more funding to it so that we can help as many young people as possible get their first home.
Supplementary question, Mr. Oxford? Ms. Drugario.
On the previous topic of the increasing waiting list, what steps have been taken to decrease the rising numbers of people on the waiting list for social housing?
Well, the number one thing to do is to provide more social housing. That means to build more, which we've been really successful at doing in the last 10 years. It also means buying more homes to bring them into the social sector, and I was really pleased to fight for and win with a set of homes called Spencer Close a couple of years ago when they were being sold. We swooped in and were able to buy them and bring them into the affordable sector as well. The more homes that you've got at your disposal in the social housing sector, the easier it is to justify allowing people onto that waiting list so that they can apply and hopefully have a degree of choice as well, so they don't necessarily get forced into homes that aren't suitable for them, but ones that are more likely to provide them with the space and the environment that they need to have a decent life. But that's number one, it's providing more social housing so that we can justify allowing more people onto the waiting list for it.
A supplemental question to that, Mr. Mayor? Any other questions for this Minister on this topic? Yes, Ms. Patrick.
Can the Minister offer a timescale in which he hopes to see any tangible improvement within the housing crisis?
That's a very good question. So I mentioned earlier that I founded the Housing Crisis Emergency Task Force on my first day in office, and that was a sign at how seriously we take this issue. I believe that in the years running up to that, successive governments had not shown that real commitment that's needed to address the housing crisis. But I'm not going to stand up and say we can wave a magic wand and fix it in the short term. It's going to take a lot of time to do that. There are lots of different angles we need to approach. So the First Step scheme, that's going to start paying equity loans out relatively soon. So for those people, that's going to have an impact really soon. We've lowered the age limit for social housing. That's going to help people really soon. But I mentioned that I want to change the law on how rental tenancies are governed. That's going to take a bit of time to get that written up and hopefully get it approved in this Assembly and in force. So even though I'd desperately love to do that tomorrow and get on with it, because it's a complex piece of work, that takes a little bit longer. But I'm hoping in this term of office that this government has remaining, which is just over 2 years, I'm hoping we'll be able to point out some very clear improvements that have been made in that time and say to the public, you know, we really did try on this and made some achievements, because I think we've had too many years of failure up until this point.
Supplemental question, Ms. Patrick. Does anyone else have a question for this Minister on this topic? Final supplementary question, Ms. Sheridan, if you wish.
In relation to the equity loans, would they have interest?
Minister.
No, they don't have interest on them, which is very important, because I think if you are requiring people to build up interest and pay it back as you go along, well, that's just another cost on top of the mortgage to make it less accessible. So the way that we've set this up is that there's no interest on the loan, but the value of the loan will go up or down along with the value of the home. So if you had a 20% equity loan of a home of a particular value, if it increased in value over the time you lived there, when you wanted to sell it, you would then pay back at the same rate of increase that the value of the home has increased, but you just use the money that you've received from the sale to pay it back. So that's a way of mitigating the costs, and it essentially means that for your day-to-day living and paying your bills and paying your mortgage, it's basically irrelevant. It only becomes relevant at the point of sale, and by that point, hopefully you're in a good position to then move on to your second home, which may be a bigger home because you're looking at starting a family. So by scaling it that way, it mitigates the impact it has on people when they first need to get their foot on the ladder, which is the most difficult part of your journey into home ownership.
Very much, Minister. The next question, Maria Strigario of Holia will ask of Deputy Lehegera of St Helier North, who's the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs. Mr Strigario.
With antisocial behaviour becoming increasingly problematic in some areas, will the Minister advise whether consideration has been given to harsher sentences, including jail time, for young people who have repeatedly offended?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the member for the question. In the later part of the 20th century and until now, the general trend of sentences for children and young people has been away from punitive restrictions of liberty and towards rehabilitation and restorative justice. It is still possible for children and young people to be detained, although in a secure detention facility rather than a jail. For example, when the offence is very serious or the risk to others is very severe. Whilst this may seem like an attractive solution to repeated minor offending, especially to those who are being directly affected by this behaviour, the risk with using detention is that a person who would have naturally grown out of crime by their early 20s may be locked up for long periods of time, might instead become used to detention, resentful of the authorities and unable to get a job, and therefore will have a record. The more difficult it is for someone to come back into society, the more likely they are to offend in future. Careless application of harsher sentences has the potential to turn children and young people engaged in low-level offending into lifelong criminals. Harsher, non-custodial sentences have been considered in the past, including criminal behaviour orders and something like the UK antisocial behaviour orders. But if brought in without careful thought, such orders might not meet their objectives. And it should be noted that the UK's experience of ASBOs was not a positive overall experience. That being said, the criminal justice system must be kept under continual review, and any proposed method of reducing crime and antisocial behaviour must be considered on the evidence.
Supplemental question, Ms Strigario.
Has the Minister considered opening a young offenders unit in the main prison for repeating offenders?
Thank you, sir. As I've already stated in my previous answer, we do not utilise the prison at Lamoy unless it is absolutely essential for a young person. There is a facility outside of Lamoy prison, and I think it's imperative that young people aren't put at Lamoy, because, as I said, it's not, in relation to the offence of antisocial behaviour, I believe there are other ways that we can deal with it. And I also understand that, of course, this can be continuing behaviour. What is positive is that we're looking at all sorts of different ways of being able to engage with young people and people in society to enable us to actually reduce that offending.
Any other questions for this Minister? Ms Davies.
Thank you, sir. Has the Minister considered mandatory community service for such reoffenders? Thank you.
I haven't actually considered mandatory community service. The thing is that there is community service in relation to adult offenders, and this is something that is currently being looked at. the thing is that what we need to be able to do and achieve is actually being able to provide community service that is relative to the young people, and also that it's actually completed away from adult offenders. So it is programmes that are being looked at in line with the probation service, because obviously that is quite important, that whatever community service that we put in place, there's going to be benefits to the young person involved.
Further supplemental from Ms Davies? Anyone else wishing to ask a further supplementary question of this Minister? Sierra.
If the Minister does not intend to harshen the sentence of the youth criminals, how else might the Minister tackle this problem specifically?
Thank you, sir. I think it depends on the nature of the offence, and the question refers to antisocial behaviour. Last week, I was fortunate enough to attend the launch of Building a Safer Community. And this launch, this framework, builds on the work that was done between 2005 and 2019, which was called Building a Safer Society. I was heavily involved in that period as I was a community officer. I was an inspector of a community team, and we did extensive work in relation to antisocial behaviour at that time in various parts of the island. And what we did was we engaged with young people alongside the youth service, education, housing, and other agencies, including the Honorary Police. That kind of work is vital, as is the work of what was previously Prison Me No Way, which is now being relaunched under the Building a Safer Community project. And so therefore, now Year 8s are getting inputs in relation to policing, drugs, vaping in schools and other areas, so that young people will be educated about the sort of what can happen if they follow certain paths. And I think that is more important, trying to actually educate people rather than trying to deal with the matter afterwards. The other thing that Jersey is very fortunate to have is the Honorary Police system and the Parish Hall inquiry. And so young offenders can be dealt with and be given positive words of advice and also deferred sentences in order that we can try and improve that behaviour.
Supplemental question, Ms Vera? Does anyone else have any questions for this Minister on this topic? Final supplementary, Mr Gaia? No. Very well. We come then to the next question that Ines Monero of Holia will ask the following question of the Chief Minister.
Thank you. Further to the adoption by the State of Gaza's ceasefire proposition, will the Minister advise whether there are any plans to provide aid to civilians in Gaza and what such aid would include?
Chief Minister.
Happens sometimes. Sorry about that. Since the start of the crisis last October, Jersey funds have supported the provision of essential medical supplies and emergency food and water. Jersey's overseas aid have made 2 grants in 2023, one to the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs of £200,000. And their mission is to mobilise and coordinate humanitarian action to alleviate human suffering, and to the International Health Partners of £80,000, and they enable better access to healthcare across the world. Following the escalation of the crisis, Jersey Overseas Aid has agreed to 2 more grants in 2024, one to the United Nations World Food Programme. They are the world's largest humanitarian organisation saving lives in emergencies using food assistance. Their grant is £150,000, and another grant again to the International Health Partners of £100,000, which will help address critical food and medical needs. The Government of Jersey, along with Jersey Overseas Aid, continue to closely monitor the conflict and support humanitarian efforts in order to contribute
to the international community's collected efforts to work towards a just and lasting peace. Thank you.
Yes. Supplemental question, Ms. Miller.
Thank you. Has the Minister considered providing funds to the UNRWA in respect of its aid work?
Minister.
The Jersey Overseas Aid tries to select carefully. I'm sorry, I'm just looking for the criteria for how it selects who it donates to, and that's aimed currently for 2023 and 2024 outside of Gaza, six countries, six of the poorest countries in the world. So they tend to give money directly to work in those countries. I can't answer whether the plans for this year are to give directly to the UN or the other organisation you mentioned. But I do know that further aid above what I have already mentioned is being considered for Gaza through the United Nations, bear with me, through the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, to which it's already given funds. Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for the Chief Minister on this topic? Sienna Springett.
I understand that the donations are being made. However, how will the Minister plan to visually show their support to those affected?
Sorry, could the member repeat the question, please? I didn't hear it.
I understand that donations are being made. However, how will the Minister plan to visually show their support to those affected?
Sorry, I couldn't hear the last part of the question. It's my hearing, it's not your voice.
I understand that donations are being made. However, how will the Minister plan to visually show the island's support to those affected?
It's visually show the island's support to those affected. Is that correct?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question, but Jersey's Overseas Aid produce thorough and detailed annual reports of the work they do. I'm not sure if that answers the question, but that's unless she wants me to stand in the Royal Square, the placard perhaps.
Well, I was just considering when the Ukraine war started, there was a lot of visual support on the island, like flags were put up everywhere and candles were lit outside the States Chamber. I was wondering if anything like that was going to be done.
Thank you. Yes, I remember the show of unity from the island. As I understand it, Jersey's Overseas Aid don't work in that way, and I don't think there are any plans for them to promote what they do in a similar way to which we showed unity for the Ukraine. But it's certainly, I think islanders can be proud of what we do through Jersey Overseas Aid. We contribute 0.27% of our GVA, that's the value of our economy, which in 2023 was approximately £14 million to helping poorer countries and people in need. So perhaps we should be a bit more visual about it. Thank you.
Ms. Monero.
So the Minister mentioned further aid, and just how much is he considering to add on to?
How much money, I think, is the question, Chief Minister.
How much more money above the donation?
I'm not sure that's a matter for for Jersey Overseas Aid. I would think we were looking in tranches around somewhere between 80 and 200,000 pounds have been the level of grants we've made so far. So it will be in that sort of area.
Do you have a supplemental question on that one? Any other questions for the Chief Minister arising out of this question? Well, then do you have a final supplementary, Ms. Mayor? No. Very well. Then we come to the last question with notice, which Ms. Patrick will ask of Deputy Karina Alves, Assistant Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning. Ms. Patrick.
Will the Minister advise whether he has any plans to include agriculture and fisheries within the education curriculum or within adult skills programme?
Yes, Assistant Minister.
Thank you, sir. There are currently no plans to make formal changes to the education curriculum in this area, as both are already in place within the geography, PSHE and science curriculums. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental questions?
Does the Minister at least acknowledge the importance of the education and the history of agriculture for the youth, because the youth may adopt the career of agriculture as it creates a safety net for Jersey's economy in case of an economic crash such as 2008? And this issue is certainly something to worry about because the agricultural industry is declining rapidly.
Minister.
Yes, the short answer to that is yes, absolutely. The Jersey curriculum currently directly references the Harbour and Maritime Museum as local resources to support curriculum delivery, as well as wider land use. Obviously, without going into more detail, the sciences cover many areas around the knowledge of agriculture and fisheries. I've also been recently made aware that we have twinning groups which currently operate through the parishes with other jurisdictions, where some of the things that are being currently explored are whether we can do exchange programs or online and distance learning with the universities in this field in other jurisdictions as well. Thank you, sir.
Any other supplementary questions to the Assistant Minister? Ms Springett.
How does the Minister plan to directly target the actual history of Jersey's agriculture rather than the general idea of it?
Thank you, sir. A lot of this is already covered in the curriculum, so there are crossovers with history, where students are taken to see how the kind of the evolution of the economy within Jersey, and that is again with direct references to the harbour and the maritime museums. There's also the geography curriculum addresses areas in terms of land use and human economic activity, including distribution of natural resources at Key Stage 2, with a sustainability additional focus at Key Stage 3. We also have forest schools as well is offered in primary schools, and introduces an early understanding of sort of trees and hedgerows and their importance to our island to pupils in Key Stage 1.
Supplemental question, Ms Springett? No? Mr Jenkins.
Does the Minister know the last time the curriculum was reviewed to ensure that there are sufficient information offered about agricultural fisheries to young people?
Thank you, sir. I don't know when the curriculum was reviewed with that specific intent. I know that the curriculum is reviewed regularly to make sure that we are in line with, obviously, with the national standards, and to make sure that we're offering students the best that we possibly can to support with the best outcomes. Thank you.
Supplemental questions, Jenkins? Anyone else have any questions for the Assistant Minister? Ms Davies.
In regards to college and secondary schools, is there any way that the Minister proposes accessibility for extracurricular activities? Thank you.
Mr Minister.
I think we obviously have an issue around schools having sort of finite time as well as resources. I know that there had been talk in the previous governments about extending the school day, which probably would not be that popular. So I think we have to be very careful of, obviously, I think we would love to be able to cover every single part of life that we can and topics that people are interested in, but we have to be careful and prioritise accordingly in order to ensure that the time that is spent in school is spent appropriately and proportionately.
Have a supplemental question, Ms Davies? Ms Springett. Ms Springett?
Considering that not everyone does geography for further education, and it is more of a overall, like the whole of the UK rather than Jersey in specifics, how would you implement this in possibly assembly times? That's often finances focus more than physical labour, which suits some people more than.
Thank you, sir. I think Assembly Times is a good opportunity to maybe have guest speakers in to talk to students in these areas. I think maybe Form Times as well could be utilised as that. So I think that there is obviously scope to include information around this, but again, it has to be measured and proportionate.
Do you have a supplemental, Ms. Penny? Sierra.
Can the Minister acknowledge the importance of encouraging pupils in a career in farming and agriculture to promote Jersey's dying industry, farming, and this should be made a priority in the PSHE curriculum?
Minister.
Thank you. Yes, I do acknowledge that. I do acknowledge that obviously living on a very small island, we quite regularly experience disruptions to our food sources, and so food security is important. Currently, there are level 3 qualifications that schools and colleges could consider if there was sufficient interest, which includes certificates and diplomas in land-based services. I know that currently Highlands College currently offers an extended diploma in animal management, for example, which is also part of farming. So there is, again, there has to be enough sort of supply and demand. Thank you, sir.
Do you have a supplemental question for that, Vera?
I'm going to try to phrase it as a question.
Well, it has to be, so far away.
Can the Minister acknowledge that, or campaign, I should say, to involve more agriculture and farming into PSHE, so therefore it encourages that demand, so we can carry on fueling our industry that promotes history and everything else?
It is currently already included in the PSHE lessons. Obviously, PSHE, I think, is only once a week at secondary school level, and there's quite a lot to fit into that. I would probably prefer to support it more more widely, maybe in careers fairs, get more people sort of involved in that, having more kind of encouraging families maybe to go and out and visit. I know that obviously we've spoken today about housing and some other things, that there are other pressures within our society. So I think that there's probably a lot more of a holistic approach needed in order to be able to do this. Thank you.
Any other supplementary questions for the Assistant Minister in this connection? No? Do you have a final supplementary, Ms. Bantry? Very well. Well, that ends the period of questions with notice. We now come on to a period of 15 minutes, approximately. I'll extend it if it's all going terribly well. Of questions.
Can I point out that my microphone is broken, so I wondered if I could be excused from the...
Chief Minister, you can move to the bench behind you if you'd like and use that microphone. That's perfectly all right. There's a question of 15 minutes, approximately, without notice, to Deputy Farnham, who's our Chief Minister. Who would like to ask the first question? Don't let the Chief Minister get off lightly. This is your chance to ask. Ms. Davies.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister have any strategies to decrease the cost of living? Thank you.
Chief Minister.
Yes, sir. The Minister for Sustainable Economic Development has recently announced that he's re-establishing the Anti-Inflation Strategy Group. That's the group that looks at how the government can introduce actions that bear down on the cost of living. It's rather difficult because whilst we have our own fiscal policy, we don't control monetary policy. That's policy that controls exchange rates, and we tend to be impacted by decisions that are made in the United Kingdom. So the Anti-Inflation Strategy Group is being established, and the Common Strategic Policy, one of the aims in that, we haven't published that yet, we're due to publish that, is for the government to keep its own price increases and fuel duty and alcohol duty increases as low as possible. Thank you.
You have a supplementary question, Ms. Davies? Any other question for the Chief Minister? Yes, Ms. Carroll.
Does the Minister plan to create a new government plan or to keep the previous government's plan?
Well, somewhere between the two, I think. The previous government did a lot of good work. And there are two government plans. One is our Common Strategic Plan, which the new government has to put in place within, I think it's 6 weeks or 8 weeks of taking office. The other government plan is actually what I refer to as the annual budget and 3-year financial plan. The Common Strategic Plan that will be launching hopefully next week is similar. It's built upon the foundations of the previous Common Strategic Plan, but with 12 new priorities for delivery in the remainder of this term. And the budget, or the actual government plan, we are pretty much sticking with what was agreed for 2024 with some amendments, because we're going to be reprioritising spending, and then we'll create a new budget and government plan for years 25 and 26.
Supplemental question, Ms. Carroll. Ms. Martins.
Does the Minister have any plans of increasing pay for teachers and other key workers, for example, nurses?
Thank you. We're pleased to have recently announced and agreed terms with the teachers, which for 2024 offered a pay increase of 9% plus a one-off payment of £1,500, and that's been extended to cost of living plus 1% for 2025 and 2026. As I said, I'm pleased to say we've come to, I think, a good and fair arrangements with teachers, which recognises the value of teaching to our island and goes some way to readdressing the pay, the deterioration pay that we've seen recently.
Supplemental question, Ms. Martins? Ms. Barber.
Would the Chief Minister be opening to considering prolonging the available time for a woman is able to have an abortion from 12 to 18 weeks for reasons of women's distress, as the law undermines those who don't find out until they are pregnant until the 8 to 10 week mark and have very little time to decide on their final decision? It is certain that the current law, which was written in 1997, needs closer analysis.
I would certainly not be comfortable in expressing a personal view on that, because I would need to think more carefully about that and consult with appropriate experts. But what I would support is a review of the legislation, or any legislation that's deemed to be dated, to ensure it's appropriate for modern society. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Ms. Barber.
If the law is not reconsidered, how will the Minister consider increasing support for the mother and the child if she passes her first trimester?
I simply don't know the answer to that. I'd have to think very carefully. But I think the government would want to take a very thoughtful approach. The new government's aim is to support islanders in every way it possibly can. But I'm sorry, I'm not qualified to give you an answer on that right now. It needs careful consideration. Thank you.
Starksbury.
As the proportion of Jersey's population over the age of 65 has increased by 3.2% to 18.1%, does the government have any initiatives in place to ensure that young islanders return after higher education to establish a younger population within the island?
Yes, the biggest, I believe, the biggest challenge that we face now in the medium to long term is the projected decrease in working age population. One of the challenges we've spotted, as Deputy Messick alluded to earlier in relation to housing, is the cost of living and affordability, and that is a great deterrent for young people, not just to return to the island, but actually to stay in the island. We know of a number of young people who are choosing to leave and seeking to set up home in other countries simply because of that reason, which is why the new government's plan will focus on a number of areas that bear down on the cost of living, aims to provide more affordable housing, and other initiatives such as the extension of child and nursery care to make cost of living more affordable for young people.
Supplemental question, Mr. Answer. Any other questions for the Chief Minister? Ms Carroll.
I apologise for not having brought this up before, but however, based on the previous first answer that you had given us, what 12 new policies specifically does the Chief Minister have in mind in contrast to the previous governments?
Well, I am afraid I'm not going to be able to share those with you just now because it's a policy under consideration due to be lodged by the Council of Ministers next week. What that basically means in English is that the Council of Ministers haven't finally approved those 12 priorities as yet. But like I say, they will be made available publicly next week. Thank you.
You have a supplemental question, Ms Carroll. Ms Fitzpatrick.
Does the Minister consider that the fact that £130 million in the past decade has been spent on the ongoing hospital project is a sufficient use of public funds while there are ongoing teacher strikes happening across the island state schools?
No, I regret deeply that we haven't been able to agree on previous hospital projects until now. So whilst that is an unacceptable amount of money that's been spent on it, it's not all been wasted. Quite a considerable amount of that money has been utilised towards this project. I can't remember the exact figure, I think approximately £30 million of that has been spent on acquiring property and land, which can be utilised and is a valuable asset for the taxpayer. But the short answer is yes, I regret it, but I'm pleased to say now the new government are working closely together. Deputy Binet and I agreed, Council of Ministers are agreed. And what I can say is it is our top priority of the Common Strategic Plan we're going to lodge next week. The number one priority in that is to get the hospital built. Thank you.
Did you have a supplementary question, Ms Fitzpatrick? Any other questions for the Chief Minister? Ms Martins.
Does the Minister have any plans of increasing pay for nurses and carers, taking into consideration how understaffed the hospital is?
Can I ask if the member is referring to hospital staff or the private sector?
Hospital staff.
So pay negotiations or pay offers, I think, have been made to the various unions and staff, and they're under consideration. But the current offer, I believe, is slightly ahead of inflation for the next 3 years, and it's under consideration. But yes, what this government does want to do is bring public sector pay, especially to those people working on the front lines of health and education, back into line with what it should be, because over the last 10 years there's been a significant real terms cut in their pay because pay increases haven't kept pace with inflation. So that is an ambition of this government. We won't be able to achieve it all in one go, but I hope over the next years future governments will work to ensure that, especially for teachers and medical staff and other staff on the front line, we work to address that.
Supplementary question, Ms Martins? Vieira.
Regarding the abortion question, will the Minister strongly consider speaking to young women, predominantly, to gain a sense of social response?
Yes, of course I will. I would make myself available, so as I would hope any minister or states member would, to not only speak with members of our community, but to listen. I think from my perspective, I need to listen and understand more to give the right answers. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Ms Ms Jenkins.
Does the Minister have any plans in place to create more entry-level jobs within the hospital, such as junior doctors, to create more jobs for young people in Jersey and to increase the number of doctors on island?
Well, that's a question I would... Am I allowed to transfer questions to fellow Minister Sergio?
Sadly not, Chief
Minister. It's a shame otherwise. I know the Health Minister would have liked to answer that one. I think the short answer is we want to attract as many islanders, as many local people we can into working on island and staying on island, especially in our health and education services. So I'm not sure whether the Education Minister is, the Health Minister is working along those lines. But I'm sure that's a shared ambition. We want to do everything in our power to keep people on Ireland and work in those essential industries. Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary question?
Is there any specific plans in place for this, though?
I'm afraid I'd have to refer that to the Health Minister. He's not giving me any help. He's not nodding or shaking his head. He's nodding his head, so I think there will be plans. And I know that the hospital and health service do have very proactive recruitment processes in place, simply because there is pretty much a global shortage of qualified staff to work in those areas. So I'm confident that we're doing everything we can to attract local people, qualified local people, or even train them. Thank you.
Any other questions for the Chief Minister? Duxbury.
Does the Chief Minister have a plan to reduce waiting times for operations and MRI scans on the island?
Again, that's another area that is being proactively addressed by the health team. He's nodding his head enthusiastically on that. And I know we are making progress into shortening waiting times. As a backbencher, last year I brought questions to the previous health minister asking to introduce CT and MRI scans for the detection of other types of cancers, including prostate cancer in men, because a recent large research exercise in the UK came back with very positive results that CT scans and MRI scans could be used for better cancers. So I'd like to see that increase significantly, of course. Going back to the previous question, the biggest challenges I know that Minister and the Minister faces are the restriction on resources. We'd like to do more, but we don't have the resources or in some instances, the qualified staff and consultants to deal with it. That's a big challenge we're trying to tackle.
Supplemental question, Ms. Duxbury?
Does the Chief Minister have a plan to bring a radiotherapy department on the island?
It's in the treatment of cancers, the best results tend to be, again, through the very high throughput cancer treatment centres that we see in the UK. The more people they deal with, the more people they treat, the better they come, and the better at getting good results. So we don't have the scale, the economies of scale, really, to achieve that. Locally, we do some treatments here, but at the moment, the current policy is to retain that process, and because islanders will get the best treatment through the United Kingdom and off-island treatment centres.
Ms. Barber.
When considering social responses to abortion, will the Minister take into the account the survey done by the Bailiwick Express, saying almost 3/4 of the respondents believe that abortions in Jersey should be available without any justification of need?
Well, that's a good point, and again, I would have to think about that. I'm not comfortable with answering that on the spur of the moment. So without really understanding the reasons behind why that should be done, but as I've said, if I can reiterate, I would certainly support reviewing the legislation to make sure it is commensurate with current society, and I undertake to learn more about this issue. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Ms. Barber. Any other member have questions for the Chief Minister? Ms. Jenkins?
Does the Minister have any plans in place to increase the number of recycling plants on the island?
No, there are no current plans to increase the amount of recycling we already have, because I understand that's handling the current recycling needs of the island. I'm also very pleased to see over recent years the introductions of parish and curbside recycling, which I think is proving to be very successful and working well. But at this moment in time, there are no plans to improve the measures we have in place. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Ms. Jenkins? Ms Esselman.
Does the Minister see it as a priority to preserve the agriculture industry, considering the history on the island, as well as recently food delays with shipping from the mainland?
Yes, I do, absolutely. Members might be interested to know that about 70% of the island's land mass is managed by the agricultural sector. And I was very pleased recently to support a proposition by the now Minister for the Environment to increase the funding to the agricultural sector, which I believe has provided new confidence in the sector.
Supplementary questions? Does any other member have questions for the Chief Minister? Ms Carrow.
Based on Ms Duxbury's point about radiotherapy, does the Chief Minister acknowledge this makes it harder for those unable to travel due to health restrictions, and how does he plan to support the families?
Yes, I do. That's one of the downsides of having treatment off island is tend to be away from home and away from your family, and it's not as convenient as it would be having it on island. Patients are supported by the team in the health service that provide transport and make travel arrangements and accommodation arrangements. So there is a support in place. And it is a difficult balance. If we did invest in having our own all-island treatments, I don't think we'd get the same success rate as I said, the larger units that see bigger throughputs of people. So on balance, I still think it's worthwhile, and from a health perspective, it's more advantageous to travel to get the best treatment.
Supplemental question? Is there any other? Ms Springett.
Feeding back on our JCG members, convenience isn't the issue towards the trauma and fear leaving the island and loved ones when facing cancer. What will you do to support those already affected by this trauma?
I think there are a number of support systems in place, and we'll deal with bereavement. And I can speak from this because I have lost my mother in that particular way some years ago. And we were supported greatly in those days by Jersey Hospice. But there are services, counselling services and bereavement services on island. We provide financial support during the treatment to islanders. And we will continue to monitor the support we provide to make sure it's appropriate and improve it wherever possible. And I do recognise that it would be easier to stay on island and stay close to home to have treatment. But I think, like I say, we want to make sure islanders get the very best treatment, life-saving treatment when it's needed.
Supplemental question, Ms Springett. Is there any other member? Ms Davies.
Thank you, sir. Would just like to ask, does the Minister support inter-island relationships such as with Guernsey? Thank you.
Yes, very, very much so, I do. And of course, we're doubly lucky now in the Channel Islands because their Chief Minister is also called Lyndon. And we've known each other a long time, and we have a Jersey-Guernsey summit planned for June. It's not confirmed yet, but it is planned. And we work closely with Guernsey on a number of issues. The Channel Islands are, I think, a unique part of the great British family. We're not part of the United Kingdom. But also, whilst we have a lot in common, our cultures are quite different. And I think we need to always recognise that and celebrate that as well. But yes, I do support inter-island working very much so. And I would like to see improved travel links as a starter. And again, that's not always easy because of the economies of scale in maintaining it. But the simple answer is yes.
Supplementary question, Ms James? Any other member have a question for the Chief Minister? Ms Jenkins?
Does the Chief Minister have any plans to increase the support for major sports clubs such as Jersey Red, seeing how the revenue loss was high following its closure, as well as the social and health benefits lost?
In 2014, the political responsibility for sport was transferred from education to the economy department to recognise not only the health benefits of sport, but the economic benefits of sport. And recently, the Assembly debated whether to continue to financially support Jersey Reds. In the end, it decided not to, and I think that was a great loss for the island, but also we had to balance that with financial prudence. I would like to see more support for sport, I think, and I know I share the views, and we share views with the Infrastructure Minister, also has responsibility for sport as an Assistant Minister for Economic Development. And we've been discussing recently how we can further help on island sports clubs with facilities provision and making their offerings also more economically sustainable, such as Jersey Bulls, who our football team now, who has got a growing island support. I'd also like to see further investment in professional sport over here. I think Jersey Reds was a great example of a small island competing at the highest level, the second tier, highest level of international rugby. And I'd like to see some funding or some policy that goes some way to trying to reintroduce sport at that level.
Supplemental question, Ms. Jenkins? Settlement. You've changed your mind? Yeah. It's all right. It's perfectly acceptable. I'll take one further question. I'm being awkward having the mace taken away because it needs to be locked up in a secure environment. Stuxbury.
Does the Minister support the plan for the bridge between Jersey, Guernsey and France, and has he considered the opportunity this would have?
The short answer is no, I don't support a bridge. I welcome innovative ideas, but I think it's unrealistic, it's unsustainable, and it's very unlikely to happen. And I would rather get the hospital built first. Thank you.
Supplemental question, is that? Right, I think we have time for one further question with the Chief Minister, if anyone wants to flick the light on really quickly. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next part of the order paper. Yes, Ms. Springer.
Given the financial support available for families suffering with cancer, how will the Minister promote the knowledge of this access for those previously unaware?
Well, so this is managed and promoted by the hospital and health services. So I would very much hope that islanders being helped with cancers and other terminal illness would be pointed in that direction by the health service, and if they're not, then we would ask them to make contact with their states member as soon as possible. But I've said before, I think I would commend the health service and the staff there. I know they work hard and they go above and beyond where they can to make sure the service for islanders who are suffering with terminal illness is as good as it possibly can be. That's not to say we don't make mistakes from time to time. Thank you.
You have a supplemental question, Ms. Springer? No? Very well. Well, then that brings questions to the Chief Minister to end. Thank you very much, Chief Minister. On behalf of members of the Jersey Youth Assembly, could I thank the Chief Minister and his colleagues from the Council of Ministers for joining us this afternoon. All the ministers, as you know, are extremely busy people, but they're also keen to learn and to understand what your concerns are and what issues you believe to be important. So they've been left in no doubt by the questions that have been asked and that we've had this afternoon. In addition to ministers who may take the opportunity now to disappear, I'm not sure, we've also been joined by at least 6 or 7 states members up in the public gallery. So the questions that you've asked and the issues that you have raised have had a wide audience amongst states members. Okay, thank you very much. Very well. We now move on to public business, and after the debate gets in motion, I will step out, as I said I would have to, and Deputy Jeune will take over the chair. Sorry? Oh, in a minute. Right, we now move on to the first item of public business. The first is a proposition from Ms. Jade Caho of Jersey College for Girls, and I ask the greffier to read the proposition.
The Assembly is asked whether it is of opinion that Jersey should introduce mandatory education or training until the age of 18.
Ms. Caho.
Education and training have become indispensable tools for personal development of our youth, economic prosperity, and social progress for the island. As the economy continues to grow, the need for a skilled and knowledgeable workforce is in high demand. Introducing mandatory education or training until the age of 18 is an immense opportunity for Jersey to empower its younger citizens and foster economic resilience and create a further thriving society. Education until the age of 18 is something that we believe should be implemented in our island to ensure the development of greater range of skills and to further offer opportunities to younger people later in life. In 2021, the participation rate of 16 to 18-year-olds in Level 3 qualifications was 26.6%, and this is compared to the UK, where 71.8% are in full-time education, 66.5% are studying Level 3 qualifications as of 2022, and 100% of 16 to 18-year-olds in the UK are involved in either full-time education, apprenticeships, part-time education, employer-funded training, or in other education and training. Introducing a law similar to that of the UK would ensure that young people were given the same opportunities to students in the UK. The students would receive many benefits, such as increasing their skills levels and better preparing them to find success and succeed in employment. The students would be able to earn higher wages as they are more valued due to being more qualified. And in addition to higher wages, better qualified individuals enjoy improved employment prospects and increased likelihood of receiving workplace training. These young people would be more likely to get promoted and undertake further learning in further learning in the future and include progressing into higher education. These are wider benefits associated with higher qualification levels, such as a better health and improved social skills. There would also be further benefits for Jersey's economy, which will increase demand more highly skilled employees and benefit for individuals, increasing earnings. It would eliminate opportunity cost for young people on Jersey compared to those in the UK, as well as reducing the number of economically inactive individuals on the island. And as of this, we propose that all children under the age of 18 should either be partaking in Level 3 qualifications or something of the equivalence. This could be achieved by education through employment, such as being trained by a company with specific sets of skills, education through apprenticeships or part-time education, as explained before, and this would be introduced in 2030, so students are aware of the options from the time they enter secondary school. And this will also allow them to be conscious of the opportunities available for them post-16 education. We believe, as a smaller community than England, with a populations of 509 times smaller than this proposal would be much easier to administrate. Thank you.
What's the proposition seconded?
I second Ms. Carey's proposition of implementing mandatory education or training until the age of 18 in Jersey. I believe that this is a proactive step towards ensuring the personal and economic development of our youth and the prosperity of our society. As our economy expands, the demand for skilled workers continues to rise, and extending compulsory education presents an opportunity to equip our younger residents with the necessary knowledge and skills to thrive in the workforce. Currently, Jersey lags behind the UK in terms of participation rates and qualification attainment among 16 to 18-year-olds. By aligning our educational policies with those of the UK, we can provide equal opportunities for our students and enhance their prospects for employment and career advancement. Not only will this initiative benefit individuals by increasing their earning potential and employment prospects, but it will also contribute towards Jersey's economic growth by ensuring a highly skilled workforce. By introducing this measure in 2030, we give students time to prepare for their post-16 education and make informed decisions about their future pathways. Given our smaller community size compared to England, the administrative challenges of implementing this proposal should be more manageable, making it feasible to execute effectively. Overall, extending compulsory education until the age of 18 is a strategic investment into the future success and well-being of our island community.
Very well. Does any member wish to speak on the proposition? Ms Davies.
I would like to ask how exceptions will be targeted or considered, such as neurodiverse students or students that have family involvement or family businesses that they need to do in addition to educational training above the age of 16.
Sorry, thank you, Ms Davis. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Ms Jenkins.
In response to Ms Davies' question, we have proposed that there's education through employment, so family businesses will be taken into account through that. And for neurodiverse students, there could be part-time education implemented to allow them to take time away from school and work on these skills that they need to build for later in life.
Thank you. Any other member who wish to speak? Yes, Ms Patrick.
I would like to ask, how do our friends at JCG intend to tackle the shortages of teachers on the island, also taking into consideration that less people intend to be teachers due to low wages and poor antisocial behaviour they face?
Would anyone member wish to speak? You don't have to have JCG, you don't have to reply straight away, you have as well at the end, so if there's anyone else members who would like to speak on this matter. Yes, Ms Springett.
Do our honourable friends recognise that teenagers with learning difficulties will need extra support to complete level 3 qualifications, and where would this extra support come from?
Thank you. Does any other member wish to speak on this matter? Yes, Ms Barber.
How do our colleagues intend for companies to accept apprenticeships to be compulsory or a voluntary system?
Would any other member like to speak at this time? Ms Curry, would you like to sum up? Is there anyone else in JCG ahead before Ms Curry speaks who would like to say something? Okay, yes, Ms Vera, because just to say, Ms Curry, you'll be doing the last reply, so just to make sure, but of course your JCG members would also like to speak, you can beforehand, but Ms Vera, over to you.
Do our honourable JCG friends acknowledge the negative implication of mostly high-quality individuals on the island? For example, even lower level of individuals who undergo low-qualified jobs, such as cleaners, labourers and hospitality workers. If so, should this issue be tackled?
Yes, Ms Davies.
Thank you. I would like to say, though, that this is quite a good idea. However, what if students simply do not want to have further education? Thank you.
Yes, Ms Elzamot.
How would our honourable friends intend to promote companies to taking students under their wing? In acknowledgement, taking numerous apprenticeships with very young people may be seen as worrying to companies.
Thank you. Any other member wish to speak? Anyone from JCG that's not Ms Carew who's going to be summing up at the end? Ms Jenkins.
Okay. We would encourage other companies to be involved in this scheme as it offers them lower paid workers as they aren't as highly qualified and allows them to work with young people to qualify them to the level that their company believes they should be qualified at.
Thank you. Does any member wish to speak further? Okay, Ms. Duxbury.
In response to the question about like the teachers, our idea was that for Holia we could remove year 9, 10 and 11 and just make it a sixth form college and use the teachers from there.
Thank you, Ms. Duxbury. Would any other member wish to speak before Ms. Carew sums up and we go to the vote? No. Then we'll can go to Ms. Carew I call on Ms. Carew to reply.
We do acknowledge Ms. Springett's previous point, and we also want to acknowledge that all these points are things that we will be looking forward into. And as my other teammates have explained, I think what they've said also sums up our answers, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Ms. Carew. So in the moment, we will be going to the vote to go to the vote on compulsory education to age 18. So I'd like the greffier to open the voting. Okay, so the vote is now open and I ask members to cast their votes. If all members have cast their votes, I'll ask the greffier to close the voting. And I can announce, is that closed?
Yep.
So I can announce that the proposition has been passed, adopted, with 9 pour, 5 contre, and 1 abstain. Congratulations, JCG. So we'll move to the next item in the proposition from Ms. Sienna Springett of Beaulieu, and I ask the graphic to read the proposition.
The Assembly is asked whether it is of opinion that supporting tourism should be made a priority for the island and be funded through an increase in tax on finance companies.
Ms. Springett.
The Jersey tourism industry, once a thriving cornerstone of our island's economy, now faces unprecedented challenges in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, with tourism as an industry decreased by 31% according to the Jersey government website. Despite this, Guernsey's tourism industry has rebounded with visitors levels reaching 81%. Jersey continues to struggle to regain pre-pandemic visitor levels. As such, we propose a critical examination of our current economic landscape, particularly the dominance of the finance industry, and suggest a potential solution to support our ailing tourism sector. Jersey's tourism industry faces significant challenges following the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, with visitor numbers plummeting and accommodation registrations declining. While Guernsey has seen a promising recovery, with visitor levels reaching 81% of the pre-pandemic levels by June 2023, Jersey's tourism has struggled to rebound. In 2019, Jersey welcomed 770,686 visitors, but by 2023, this number has dropped by 31% to approximately 527,000 visitors. Similarly, accommodation registrations fell from 10,500 in 2019 to 9,500 in 2022, reflecting a concerning trend. Moreover, the cost of visiting Jersey has increased, potentially deterring tourists, with a 3-person family spending £5,300 for a summer holiday in 2022 compared to £3,100 in previous years. To reverse this decline and revitalise the tourism sector, we propose prioritising tourism, supporting and funding through an increase in tax on finance companies. To address these challenges and reinvigorate Jersey's tourism industry, our proposal emphasises the implementation of various initiatives aimed at enhancing visitors' experiences and supporting local businesses. By organising small fairs, live music events, outdoor dining opportunities and inter-island festivals, we aim to create a vibrant and appealing destination for tourists. Additionally, increasing publicity and marketing efforts are essential to attract tourists and promote Jersey's unique offerings. By investing in the advertisement and supporting of local businesses willing to participate in these initiatives, Jersey can enhance its tourism appeal and stimulate economic activity. The proposed increase in tax on finance companies presents a viable solution to fund tourism initiatives without imposing additional burdens on the local community. Currently, Jersey's finance companies are subject to 10% corporation tax rate, while other sectors face higher tax rates. By adjusting tax brackets on finance companies, we can generate revenue to support tourism development while leveraging the financial strength of the sector. This strategic reallocation of funds will not only benefit the tourism industry, but also contribute to the economic diversification, job creation and community prosperity by prioritising tourism and harnessing the resources available from the finance sector. Jersey can chart a course towards sustainable tourism growth and economic resilience, enriching the lives of residents and visitors alike.
Thank you very much. And just before I ask for this proposition to be seconded, I'd just like to remind, I know we're all learning, including myself as the speaker, the new speaker of this assembly, that it is a debate. So I'd like to remind you to do some speeches instead of just questions. That's how the standing order is, that we would do speeches rather than specific questions, though you can include questions into your speeches for the proposer at the end to help sum up. And of course, to only speak once as well. That was also my mistake. So I now have a scorecard, so I will be able to keep track as well. But thank you very much for all your inputs in the last proposition. And thank you, Ms. Bringett, for your proposition, and I'd like to ask if the proposition is seconded. Yes, Ms. Esselmont.
I would like to second this to emphasise that at its current rate, Jersey's corporation tax is only charging the finance company 10%. Increasing these tax brackets for finance companies will allow investment in the tourism industry to not be a local burden, but instead an expense for Jersey's able finance industry in order to support the locals and tourists. We would like to fully emphasise the benefits of this investment into the tourism industry, promoting an attractive holiday home for both tourists and locals of the island, providing jobs and entertainment for the youth, all while boosting the confidence and economy of the island. Overall, this encourages the locals to stay in Jersey, in particular the young adults of Jersey, promoting a more lively and vibrant new aspects of the island. In addition, these new jobs and industries allow more summer employment for the youth, that the youth can be part of, striving towards Jersey's aim of decreasing levels of crime in the youth.
Thank you, Ms. Esselmont. Does any member wish to speak? Yes, Ms. Jenkins.
If companies left Jersey due to the increase in tax, how would Ms. Bringett plan on increasing tax revenue to allow for plans within the tourism?
Thank you. Any other member wish to speak? Yes, Ms. Vera.
So the proportion of which UK companies are being charged, like their tax bracket is 25%. So even if you increase the tax bracket by 20% or 15%, it's still more desirable than the UK, which still attracts investors in because of the lower tax bracket. Thank you.
Any other members who'd like to speak on this proposition? No. If no one would like to speak on this proposition, I call on Ms. Bringett to reply.
In conclusion, revitalising the Jersey tourism industry is not merely a matter of economic diversification, but a vital step towards preserving our island's cultural vibrancy and community stability. And considering it's still below the UK with having the UK tax rate of 25%, it will still attract, since Jersey will still be seen as a tax haven. By implementing targeted initiatives, supporting local businesses and reallocating resources from non-essential products, we can pave the way for a brighter and more prosperous future for Jersey, one where tourism thrives alongside our finance sector, enriching both our economy and our island's identity.
Thank you very much. And in a moment, the greffier will open the voting to ask members if they are of the opinion to support tourism as a priority for the island and be funded through an increase in tax on finance companies. Greffier, if you could open the voting, please. Thank you. And I ask, it's open, and I ask members to cast their votes. If all members have cast their votes, I ask the greffier to close the voting. Thank you, greffier. Unfortunately, Ms. Sheridan, your voting button's not working. Would you be able to say what your vote is, please? Okay. So that can be noted on the system. Thank you very much. So if we close the voting, then I can announce that the proposition has been adopted. That's 9 votes pour, no contre, and 7 abstains. Thank you very much, and well done to Beaulieu. So we move on to the next item, and this is a proposition from Tara Batrick of Beaulieu, who I understand is acting as the rapporteur on behalf of Victoria College, and I ask the greffier to read the proposition.
The Assembly is asked whether it is of opinion that the government should ban anyone born after 2009 from being able to purchase tobacco or vapes.
Ms. Batrick.
The proposal to phase out a generation of smokers and implement stricter regulations on vape purchase in Jersey is a crucial step towards safeguarding public health, particularly among the youth. Following the example set by the UK government, we propose gradually increasing the minimum age for tobacco purchasing and enforcing stringent restrictions on vape sales, especially to individuals born after 2009. The alarming statistics from the most recent Jersey Children and Young People survey underscores the urgent need for action. 20% of Year 12 students were occasional or regular smokers, and nearly 3/5, 58%, have tried e-cigarettes, with almost a third, 29%, currently using them. Moreover, the proportion of young people in Year 12 in Year 12 who have tried e-cigarettes has risen from 42% in 2018 to 58% in 2021. To effectively address the rising trend of vaping among young people, we recommend implementing comprehensive measures, including discreet display of vape products in stores and regulations on packaging to make them less visually appealing to minors. Data from the 2021 Jersey Children and Young People survey found that despite laws against selling vapes to under 18s, 58% of 16 to 17-year-olds have tried e-cigarettes, with about a third using them occasionally or regularly. Additionally, public awareness campaigns should be intensified to educate youth about the serious health risks associated with vaping, such as addiction, mental health issues, and long-term respiratory problems.
Thank you. Is the proposition seconded? Yes, please, Ms. Essen.
To second my honourable friends, I would like to emphasise that this is vital to tackle this vaping crisis among young people on the island, as we are seeing a rise in the use of tobacco and e-cigarettes in younger generations on the island, and the long-term health effects is a key concern. A key factor in the increasing number of under 18s using vapes is through Snapchat. This makes it easier for the younger generation to gain access and become addicted to vapes under the pressure
by their social circle and the easy availability in our community, adding to the reality of antisocial behaviour. Similarly to the UK, we would like to emphasise that legislation must be passed in relation to vape packaging. Less bright colours, fun-appealing flavours, drawing young people away from this product. With smoking being the biggest cause of preventable deaths in Jersey, with up to 1,000 in the Jersey hospital each year, and unarguably, we must protect these the young people on the island. By the government enforcing, much like the UK, that anyone born after 2009 will be prohibited to buy e-cigarettes and vapes, we would like to hopefully see the decline in antisocial behaviour occurring in under 18s over time, and to experience less exposure to cancer-causing chemicals and chronic bronchitis.
Thank you, Ms. Esselmont. Would there be any members who wish to speak? Yes, Ms. Minario.
Whilst I think it's a great idea to impose stricter rules, I'm just wondering how they plan on stopping older generations so people from above the age of 18 from providing younger generations getting those vapes.
Thank you. Ms. Duxbury.
Does Ms. Patrick understand the tax revenue that would be lost if tobacco or vapes were to be banned?
Thank you. Ms. Jenkins.
Seconding Ms. Duxbury's question, the loss of this tax revenue will prohibit the government from being able to hypothecate this money into education around the lack of safety of cigarettes and vapes. Also, there would still be a huge accessibility issue as there is accessibility to drugs that are illegal, and I do believe that this creates a bigger issue surrounding vapes and tobacco products.
Ms. Davies.
Thank you. I would just like to further this point that vaping is not a good thing, that there have been, on an international scale, a number of American deaths linked directly to vaping, and that, as my colleague said before me, that greater restrictions might not solve the problems, such as older generations still providing vapes for underage participants. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Vieira.
I was just going to suggest that to tackle, yes, the issue of over 18s or over people who are born after 2009 can still give vapes to younger years. I'd suggest probably increasing the, maybe not sentence, but like the harsh brutality, I guess, of sentencing those who distribute vapes illegally because yes, at first it will hopefully drift those people away and like let them see the consequences of giving vapes to minors. And I don't know if my colleagues would like to comment on this, or if I can. But morally, I think for me, giving tax on even like alcohol or especially tobacco, the fact that we're making a profit off it and charging people more, yes, it hopefully averts people away from those substances, but I do think making money off them and keeping it for that reason is morally wrong, just because it is, young people are still paying for it and the state is making money off them, off tax. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barber.
Responding to Ms. Jenkins' question, it isn't that we're banning them completely, it's the idea that we're trying to phase them out of the island instead, because vapes were originally created for cigarette users to try and stop smoking, and it just became a problem with the youth, especially that the marketing of these companies were and now are aimed for younger generations. And I think that we are just trying to create and generate greater awareness of the issues that we face with vaping because they're such new innovations, we don't know what the long-term health benefits will be, especially for young, still developing children using them are.
Thank you, Ms. Springett.
Health causes are unknown for many drugs around the world, and as they've been for a while, similarly to vapes. However, they are bad and the risk is unknown, but the health causes are going to have more of a strain on the finance industry in the long run. Even though short term it may cause a bump in the road, in the long term, the health issues that we'll be faced with in the future will cause more of a strain on our already suffering health and social care system.
Thank you. Is there any other members who haven't spoken who wish to speak? Yes, Ms. Curry.
I understand Ms. Vieira's point, saying that yes, morally, it is indecent to have taxation for tobacco. However, it's not the point that we were trying to make. Tobacco does make a large revenue for government spending, and if you do not plan on having government taxation on tobacco items, where would you get this money from?
Does any other member wish to speak before summing up? Yes, Mr.
I agree with Ms. Vieira's point on increasing punishment. However, how would it be made possible to prove these distributions to the police and/or other adults that would like to further report this issue?
Thank you. Would any other member wish to speak?
Can I
Who hasn't
not?
spoken before? No, then I'd like to call on Ms. Patrick to reply.
While we do understand the concerns about the potential economic repercussions of reduced nicotine product sales are entirely valid, it is essential to consider the long-term benefits to public health and the economy. The average 20 cigarette packet in Jersey is £10.32, indicating a significant expenditure on nicotine products. By redirecting this expenditure to other goods and services, we can stimulate economic growth and enhance overall quality of life in Jersey. By prioritising the health and prosperity of fellow islanders, we can create a more resilient and vibrant society for generations to come. Tax will still be on vapes of the older generations. I'm struggling to read the handwriting, but obviously because we're phasing them out rather than banning them completely, there will still be tax income on it. It won't just disappear overnight. It's only for people born after 2009 that can't purchase it anymore. When they hopefully become of age to do so in a legal manner. And also in regards to proving the crime of distributing nicotine products to under 18s, it's not really something that I'm very knowledgeable on, so I couldn't really give you a good answer on it, but screenshotting, if it's on Snapchat, exists, saving messages in chat is a viable option, but also the more we raise awareness of the issue and the more this is a public affair rather than just ban vapes, then I think that will gradually be reduced on its own.
Thank you. So thank you very much for that reply, Ms. Patrick. And so I'll ask in a moment the greffier to open the voting on asking the members of the opinion that the government should ban anyone born after 2009 from being able to purchase tobacco or vapes. So if you could open the voting, greffier, and I ask members to cast their votes. And I have to ask Ms Sheridan if you'll be able to say your votes. Sorry?
Abstain.
Okay, thank you. Then I'll ask the greffier to close the voting. And I can announce that the proposition has been adopted. 8 votes pour, 5 votes contre, and 3 abstentions. Congratulations, Bolia. So we move to the next item, and it's a proposition from Maria Sugario of Holia, and I ask the greffier to read the proposition.
The Assembly is asked whether it is of opinion that euthanasia should be legalised to provide individuals with the right to die with dignity.
Story.
Euthanasia at its core revolves around the right of autonomy. By legalising it, we would empower individuals facing unbearable suffering to make their own end-of-life decisions, providing a compassionate option for terminally ill patients. The legality of euthanasia has been debated and considered, yet nothing has changed. It's time to engage in a thoughtful discussion on this matter, exploring the potential benefits and risks of legalising euthanasia, and ultimately striving for a more humane and compassionate approach to end-of-life care. The diagnosis of severe conditions is associated with a heightened risk of choosing to end one's life by suicide. 1 year after diagnosis, the rate of suicide was 21.6, in which 225 per 100,000 people end their lives within the first 12 months after diagnosis. A study carried out by the Oxford UHERO Centre for Practical Ethics surveyed more than 500 adults in August 2020 in their views about the care of a patient who had 1 week to live. The study found high levels of support for euthanasia, with 79% of those surveyed saying they would like to have the option. Furthermore, slightly more than half said that they would potentially choose euthanasia for themselves or a family member if they had the choice. The National Library of Medicine conducted an experiment which aimed to investigate the effects of euthanasia on the bereaved family and friends, which found that 10 to 20% of bereaved people will suffer from traumatic grief. They used 189 bereaved family members and close friends of terminally ill cancer patients who died by euthanasia, and 316 bereaved family members and close friends of comparable cancer patients who died of a natural death. They found that the bereaved family and friends of cancer patients who died by euthanasia had less traumatic grief symptoms, less current feeling of grief, and less post-traumatic stress reactions than the family and friends of patients who died of natural causes. Currently, in 2024, 75% of respondents say they would support changing the legal status regarding euthanasia. Moreover, more than half of Britons, 52%, have personally considered travelling to Switzerland to seek euthanasia. Additionally, Jersey should consider legalising euthanasia to align with other countries within the Commonwealth. Currently, Australia, through the organisation Exit International, and Canada, through Dying with Dignity Canada, carry out the practice. More than 6 in 10 people, 63% of the British public, agree that legalising assisted dying would be safer than the current ban, whereas just in 1 in 10, 11% believe it would be less safe. To conclude, the central reason why Jersey should legalise euthanasia centres around the principles of compassion, autonomy, and alleviating suffering. A change in law would highlight the importance of personal choice in matters of life and death, respect the dignity of individuals facing incurable and unbearable suffering, and provide a humane option for ending such suffering.
Thank you, Ms. Strugario. Is the proposition seconded? Yes, Minario.
I second the statement of my peer that euthanasia should be legalised to provide individuals with the right to die with dignity. As my peer Maria has mentioned, I believe euthanasia can relieve stress from family members and provide a peace of mind to the terminally ill patients.
Thank you. Does any member wish to speak on this matter? Yes, Ms. Esselman.
Do our fellow friends acknowledge religious aspects that one should not willingly harm oneself? In religion, this can be seen as going to purgatory or hell. Do our fellow holier friends support going against religious beliefs?
Thank you. Does any member wish to speak? Yes, Ms Duxbury.
How would Mr. Gario expect this to be closely monitored to ensure the family making this decision are not doing it for external factors?
Thank you. Does any other member? Yes, Ms Springett.
Considering the cost of euthanasia, do you intend for it to be covered privately or by the states? As if it's state funded, does Holia acknowledge the burden on the states to cover the cost of euthanized individuals?
Thank you, Ms Jenkins.
There are two types of euthanasia, active and passive. Active is the patient deciding to end their own life. Passive is the removal of life-saving care. Active doesn't agree with the Hippocratic Oath, so it's unclear how this would be implemented. For passive euthanasia, would there be support for the person who has to make the decision, and how would you tackle it?
Thank you. Is there any other member who would wish to speak on this proposition? Yes, Ms Martin. Yes, Ms Martins.
I think euthanasia gives patients, families, the opportunity to prepare and accept. However, I also think legalising euthanasia might encourage the terminally ill to take this action, making it morally wrong.
Thank you. Ms Vieira.
I'd just like to emphasise the fact that vulnerable individuals can be put in situations where they are pressured into euthanasia due to maybe having a lot of money and etc. in certain situations like that. So how would you protect individuals who are vulnerable?
Thank you. Any other members who wish to speak on this proposition? Yes, Ms.
I think it's important to note that it is in no way compulsory. Legalising it doesn't make it something that an individual will have to do, specifically if it goes against religion or in terms of feeling pressurised. In no way would legalising it force anyone into that option if that's not what they want.
Thank you. Yes, Ms Patrick.
When going about legalising it, surely it needs to be understood that public opinion is subjective, and we need to think about the protests that might occur when considering legalisation of euthanasia. Unless people have a personal experience with such a thing, surely there's going to be more uproar about it because people won't fully understand the, like you said, the less traumatic side of grief about it. And surely if we're going by what is better for both the families and the patients involved, we should just further support for Jersey Hospice and end-of-life care rather than termination of it. Yeah.
Thank you. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Who haven't spoken already? Yes, Ms Thompson.
We believe that this and euthanasia should only be allowed for like physically, terminally ill people rather than those with mental health problems, as it's kind of hard for them to make their own decision in them circumstances.
Thank you. Is there any other member who hasn't spoken wish to speak? We'll just check before going to summing up. Ms Barber.
We really need to emphasise that public opinion is subjective, and you said, our colleagues from Holia said that just because it's legal doesn't mean you have to do it, and some people will disagree with that because everyone's entitled to their own opinion and to express their opinion, and there's also, you need to consider appropriate. Sorry. I'm just going to ignore that, sorry. Like I was saying, you need to consider and also accept the fact that there is going to be uproar if it is passed to legalise euthanasia, because it's a very controversial topic that has been debated for years at this point.
Thank you. Is there any other member wishing to speak at this time? Okay. If not, then I'd like to call on Ms. Strugariu to make the wish to reply.
We acknowledge the fact that this will definitely bring uproar, but I believe that one way that we could decrease this is if we have open discussions that would enable people to gain a further and more precise understanding of this practice. And also, this practice is only able to be taken by the patient themselves, and tests are taken in order to make sure that this patient is 100% able to make this decision themselves. And if these tests do not allow it, then this care and this practice will not be made. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so in a moment, I'll ask the greffier to open the voting for the proposition if the members are of the opinion that euthanasia should be legalised to provide individuals the right to die with dignity. Greffier, if I could ask you to open the voting, please. Vote is now open. And I ask members to cast their votes. Not sure if everyone's to cast their vote. Oh, one need to tell us, I'm afraid. Okay. Then we will close the voting. And I can announce that the proposition has been rejected for 5 votes pour, 9 votes contre, and 1 abstention. Thank you very much. So I'd like to, I was going to get some stats. All right, there's your stat. Thank you. So that brings us to the end of public business, so you can relax now. But before we leave, I wanted to say a couple of things. First of all, well done for all your questioning of the ministers and the chief ministers, and also for the proposers bringing those interesting and sometimes difficult propositions, and those who also then did the speeches and asked the questions. You all participated fantastically. And just some statistics from the greffier. The Chief Minister was asked 21 questions during a slightly extended 15 minutes period, which was absolutely fantastic. I think you did really well in all your questioning, and there's some very interesting answers that we got given, and I'm sure many of us will take that away for future reference. In debate 1, we had 6 speeches. Debate 2, we had 4 speeches. Debate 3, we had 10 speeches. And debate 4, we had 12 speeches. So you can see that there is definitely diversity in the different kinds of propositions that were brought and your interests in them. So in 1 hour, we managed to get 32 speeches in all in there. So well done. It's actually fantastic. Results and shows that you're very engaged, as we talked about yesterday in preparing this. But to get this event to now is that it has to run extremely smoothly, and I'm sure you agree it has run very smoothly, even if I also had to get used to being in this new role as speaker. It's down to, of course, mainly the GREF staff who are behind the scenes, liaising with your schools, organising the order paper, sorting out the arrangements so that we could have this day. And so I wanted to thank the officers of the States GREF very much, and this includes especially Rebecca Graham, who's here, and Katie Basterman, who you met yesterday, and I'm sure you can show your appreciation as you've been taught with the staff. So thank you. And as the bailiff said at the beginning of this afternoon's event, a few hours ago, that this is the 26th Youth Assembly. And over the years it's been running, we've had lots of we've had a couple of states members who have gone through and participated, and one who's actually sat through the whole of this event, which is the Minister for Housing, Deputy Mezek, who has managed to stay the course and sit here and listen to you all, and I'm sure take away back to the Council of Ministers the propositions and the discussions that have happened today. I want to thank you also to especially Miss Patrick, who stepped up to the breach for Victoria College and taking that proposition forward at the last minute. So thank you very much. You did an amazing job, but also all of you did an amazing job. So I just also wanted to maybe do a stamping for those proposers and those speakers as well. Thank you very much. So I'm advised that there are some refreshments downstairs in the members' common room. So I'd like to invite you if you'd like to join us for refreshments. You weren't able to get up and go out during the debates. Sometimes you'll see members do that in the Real Estates Assembly, but we'd like to offer you some refreshments now. And I'd like to also not only thank the ministers who participated in this event today, but also, again, all of you for your questions, your speeches during the debates, and your contributions, because they're very articulate, very incisive and very thoughtful. And it has given me lots of ideas myself. I've written lots of things down to take away as well. So thank you. And I'm sure the members, states members who are up in the gallery as well, listening as well. So thank you very much again. The Youth Assembly stands to adjourn. Thank you.